We can now talk. Yes. Are you kidding me? Oh, man. This is a 1963 split window. They all have that one piece that they won't sell because it's more important to them than money. That piece for Frank Fritz was a car he didn't let anyone see. The garage doors opened after he died. They told him the shocking truth about his most prized asset and the painful reason he kept it a secret from everyone, even his fans. I remember seeing one of these for the first time. I was 14 years old. Someone down the street had one. This car wasn't just a collectible, it was a memorial to a broken promise and a painful secret he kept until the day he died. The man before he became famous. In every small town, there's that one spot that makes you feel like you're back in the good old days. That spot was Frank Fritz's garage. They found an old, dusty car. Before we talk about what it was made of, though, it's important to talk about the man who spent his whole life looking for lost things and then became forgotten himself. Frank wasn't like other TV stars. He wasn't interested in fame or fancy cars. What he really cared about was broken signs, old petrol pumps, and other things that most people would drive right past without giving them a second thought. Find out more about the real Frank Fritz before we can understand why the find in his garage was such a big deal. Because you'll understand why that car wasn't just another find. Once you know who he was from the start, it was a part of his heart. This car going down the road would cost between $42,000 and $47,000. In my opinion, $37,000 would get me in. Frank Fritz was just a normal kid growing up in Davenport, Iowa, before he ever stepped in front of a camera or became famous. Even though he didn't come from a rich family, somebody was always drawn to him. He wasn't like the other kids. Frank was SI sorting his beer cans by color, brand, and form while they were out catching baseballs or trading cards. Old postage stamps and shoeboxes were carefully hidden by him. He would also dig up cool rocks in the garden and show them off to anyone who would listen. He liked it that his room looked more like a small junk market than a bedroom, even when he was a boy. It wasn't just a phase that made them passionate. Frank was a very interested child who always had a lot of questions. This trait stayed with him throughout his life. As an adult, he got a good job as a fire and safety officer. Even though it paid well and was a serious job, he wasn't really interested in it. He had that itch, that strong desire to collect, and it was a habit that had never really gone away. On his days off, he liked to drive around Iowa and the states nearby on the back roads. It has a little more power than the 335 because the heads are bigger, right? It has at least 25 more of them. That's a lot of 25s. His favorite places to buy things were yard sales, estate sales, and roadside stands that looked good. His favorite things were old oil cans and motorbike signs. He would bargain for them, load them up, and take them home. People who knew Frank back then said he always had the happy, laid-back vibe we saw on TV. He was friendly, a little scruffy, and had a great laugh that made you feel like you'd known him for a long time. He was the kind of person you'd meet at a diner and talk to for an hour. Somewhere along the way, his picking hobby turned into something more important. Nearby people began to call him when they needed to clean out their barns or attics. Frank Fritz was said to have an uncanny knack for finding old things and strange things. What started out as a hobby started to look more and more like a second job over time. Right around that time, Mike Wolf came into the picture. That being said, Frank's shed was already becoming a safe place to be before the TV show even existed, a private museum with works of art that were important to him. Mike Wolf had also been picking for years, and he had this big idea that he wanted to make a TV show about the strange and wonderful world of antique hunts. He and Frank knew each other from Iowa's close-knit farming scene. At first, they weren't exactly best friends, but they were like-minded people who loved old things and could find value in things other people thought were junk. 63 split window. That's the mountain's peak. They think that is the best, rarest, and most expensive one ever made. They went together like peanut butter and jelly. Frank was like the nicest person in the world, and he always had jokes to tell. He was the kind of guy you'd want to hang out with over a beer. Mike was the one who had the big ideas and drove them to take their interest to the next level. Mike was sure that Frank would be a great tool for the job. Soon enough, Frank made a huge faith move. He quit his steady job as a fire inspector and made collecting his full-time job. He then started his own business, Frank's Finds. He and Mike would hit the road together, going hundreds of miles at a time, just to look through someone else's scrapyard. Mike was set on his TV show idea and began filming their adventures to try to capture the magic of the hunt and send it to networks. They only had a beat-up van, full petrol tanks, and a dream for a long time. They were turned down over and over, but they never gave up. It took years of hard work, but finally the History Channel called. Frank already had a small but loyal group of fans in the area by that time. In the world of picking, his name meant something, but he wasn't well known yet. People put their faith in his gut, his eyes, and what he said. Frank and Mike's style of street treasure hunting seemed like a great fit for producers who wanted something new, honest, and raw. The first show of American Pickers Air, D in 2010, and people all over the country loved it. It was a simple idea. On the back roads of the country, two guys in a van look for lost history by digging through barns and sheds. The people, not the finds, were what made the show a hit. And Frank stood out without even trying. He didn't act like someone else he wasn't. He wore his favorite plaid shirts, told silly jokes, and got really excited about a rusty metal sign. People were drawn to him right away because he looked like a friend or a favorite uncle. Of course, Frank and Mike weren't the only ones there. The office manager in Iowa, Danielle Colby, was the rock that held the whole business together. She added to the team with her own special brand of charm and toughness. The three of them worked together to make something that felt real because it was. They really enjoyed the thrill of the hunt, the beauty of old, worn-out things, and the thrill of finding something that no one had seen in decades. As the years went by, it became clear what Frank was good at. He really knew how to spot old bikes, rare oil cans, and strange toys. When it came to making money, Mike was usually after the big-ticket things. Frank, on the other hand, would get excited over a hand-painted sign or a lunchbox that was decades old. He made everyone happy with his genuine happiness. The show spread all over the world, and Frank Fritz went from being a simple picker from Iowa to being a symbol of America. But as the years went by, things began to shift. The long hours on the road began to hurt both their bodies and their minds. It became clear that Frank's health was getting worse, and there was friction between him and Mike. They had fun together, which used to feel so easy, but now it felt forced. It was clear that something was wrong and things were about to change. The quiet fight and slow fade. At first, the change wasn't very clear. Frank began to show signs of being tired. For years, crawling through small spaces and moving heavy antiques, which made his back pain worse. He was also fighty. There were rumors that the two lifelong partners were having creative differences, fights over money, and rising emotional distance between each other. Then Frank's time on screen started to get shorter. He would miss whole shows and then whole segments. That was it. He was no longer there at all. There was no big show to say goodbye, no special send-off, and no explanation. There was just silence. It was shocking and hard to understand for the millions of people who had watched him in their living rooms for more than 10 years. What happened to the man who helped build the show from the ground up? The company finally made a comment after a lot of complaints and questions from fans. Mike Wolf broke the silence by saying that Frank was having major health problems. He said that Frank had major back surgery and needed some time to heal. Fans were happy with that for a while. They wished him well and hoped he'd be back on the road soon, but the weeks turned into months, and then there was a whole new season without him. The rumors got really strong. This time they were darker, which made it seem like Frank wasn't there because of just his back. Then Frank himself spoke out in an interview that was both rare and shockingly honest. He told his side of the story, which proved that there was a fight. He told Mike that he hadn't talked in years. He said Mike never called to see how he was doing after the surgery. The show had gone on without Frank, according to him, and the feeling of betrayal was strong. This wasn't just a fight at work. A bond that had been the basis of the show for decades came to an end in a cruel way. Things were even worse than people thought behind the scenes. Frank's health was getting worse quickly. The few pictures that were posted online showed a man who looked much thinner and tired. Friends said he had shut himself off and barely left the house. People who used to see him at sales and swap meets hadn't seen him in years. Frank Fritz seemed to be slowly going away, stepping out of the picture of his own life. No one really noticed until he was almost completely gone. The friendly, happy picker who had made so many people happy was now going through his worst days by himself. The relationship that seemed impossible to break before was now completely broken. The show went on with a new person next to Mike, but Frank was left behind to deal with his worsening health, a broken friendship, and a future that looked worse and worse. No one knew that the worst was still to come. One thing was going to happen that would turn this sad story into a real tragedy. Someone finally told everyone what they were all afraid of in July 2022. The strange thing is that it came from Mike Wolf's own Instagram account, not a news source. Mike told everyone in a short, sad post that Frank Fritz had a huge stroke. He begged his fans to pray for his old friend and told them how sad he was about what was happening. This post was the first real proof for many fans of